All right, yeah, I can. Okay, I'm ready. Let me see. Okay. Being a street photographer, I see a different part of Chinatown that the general public does not see. It's not a drive-by tourist destination to me. It's a real living community of people trying to survive. There's a human side of the story. We're not docile. We had some genuine concerns. I've been photographing Chinatown since my college days. That would be in the late 60s. Through the Third World movement, there was a growing intensity to tell stories ourselves and not let the mainstream society dictate to us what we should see and believe. I think that the photographs I have of Chinese Americans exercising their democratic rights, voicing concerns about things as simple as tenant eviction and specialized high school entrance exams, it shows that Chinese care about their community. I never liked the idea of being a model minority. I was never good in math or in science. I just said, well, if I'm going to be a responsible individual in this society, I got to do something else. I chose photography. It was something that I sort of picked up. At times, I'd want to be that person in front of the camera, but I can't be that person in front of the camera. So I'm looking for a suitable substitute to be my voice. But I also got him in there. Over the period of 5 decades, I've taken hundreds of thousands of photographs.
My dad was a veteran of World War II.
When I was younger, there were days that I would photograph 3 events easily. All right, this way. I sort of got an inspiration from New York Times photographer Bill Cunningham, who would photograph 3 or 4 social events riding around on a bicycle. My parents started to understand what I was doing when my photographs appeared in Chinese language publications. Or if I would have a photograph in one of the newspapers, and I would tangentially leave a copy of that on the kitchen table so they would happen to see it. My mother would brag about it. She would tell all the tenants in Confucius Plaza. She says, oh, this is my son. That was basically a sense of pride that I was recognized outside of my own family, but within the Chinese community. People have been referring to me as Corky Lee as far back as junior high school. I think it was my Jewish friend that gave me the name Corky, because the name that I was using was, at the time, was Cork. The spelling was Q-U-O-O-R-K. So, but they basically transliterate Cork to C-O-R-K-Y. So I became Corky. Okay.
I told him you have to meet Corky,
Oh,
so you want to tell us.
that's my stuff over there.
can reach you.
When people look at the photographs, they can sort of read into it that this is what was done during a certain period of time.
If they see deplorable conditions, they can say, this has to change. And maybe it'll motivate people to do something to enact those changes, either individually or collectively. Well, were you in Chinatown when Muhammad Ali came?
No.
No?
The PS1 though.
You were at PS1?
The PS1.
1975. This is right after the Thriller in Manila. Before people started to come up to me and tell me that they liked the photograph, yeah, maybe I was somewhat invisible. But if I was invisible, I didn't want the larger community, Asian Pacific Americans, to be invisible. So what have you heard about me? It's probably exaggerated.
Social photographer, like you're
Social
like
photographer?
The godfather of Asian American photography. It's like you're like
The grandfather, did you say?
the grandfather.
Really dating me now.
You never gave up, that's the thing, and now you're at a very crucial point with your work. The important part is the front end, being an activist.
Yeah,
Your
well,
work.
I'm probably more of an activist.
Be the voice for these people. The pictures are there, they're historic already, so you can't go back in time and shoot that.
After people see my photographs, they'll basically learn something about what it is to be Asian American. It's an attempt to educate people one photograph at a time. This photograph is a front page photograph from the New York Post that I was able to get in 1975. I did an end around run, kind of like a wide receiver in football. I beat out the Daily News photographer over here. But my photograph appeared on the same day that this took place. The Daily News photograph appeared the following day. This was from arguably the largest protest by Chinese Americans in New York City. There's like 20,000 that came out, and it had to do with an incident of police brutality. These two guys were in school together, and they were the tallest guys, and every time that the Chinese kids would get picked on and bullied, that they would stand up for them. But the key thing among all of this whole thing is this black kid right in the middle, and he's got this grin on his face or smile. And he just can't believe that Chinese are protesting police brutality, because that's something that happens in the black community and the Hispanic community all the time. This is from the 1982 when the union, ILGW, the International Lady Garment Workers Union, called for a strike in Columbus Park and 15,000 garment workers. This has to be the largest labor protest in Chinatown ever. And this is a candlelight vigil. This woman is lighting candles for a 9/11 vigil that takes place annually in Chatham Square. There are two streets that are named after Chinese who died. My photography connects me to people. You can be alone but not be lonely, I think. I started to lose sleep after my wife passed away. At the time, I had worked out something with the Museum of Chinese in the Americas back in 2001, and they wanted me to do an exhibit of my photography. So actually, when they heard that my wife was in hospice care, and particularly when she passed, they called me up and asked me if they should postpone the exhibit, the solo exhibit. And I said, okay, fine. Let me go ahead. So basically, I went into the darkroom and I did all my grieving, printing photographs in preparation for the exhibit. And it took me about 2 weeks. I came out, and still a lot of people who came to the wake. I mean, to the opening, because it was probably a couple of weeks after the wake and the funeral. They didn't know. So, you just sort of move on, because I think that's what my wife would want me to do.
It's always been a pretty tough balance. I had to pay the rent, so I have to generate enough income on a monthly basis or an annual basis. Ideas are worth nothing if you can't generate a paycheck. The tough part about being compensated for my work is, especially if it appears on the internet, people think it's in the public domain. So when I see it, I basically let people know. I wish you had asked me for permission so I could say yes or no. As I collect more, these photographs will become valuable. And basically, I've always looked at the collection as my 401k. As I start to age, I get really tired and exhausted. I have chronic arthritic knees. I'll go home and I'll have cramps in my forearm and my legs and so forth, and I know I've been up on my feet for like 6 hours. After a gala dinner or something, I don't get a chance to eat. So I'll stop by a halal food truck, after I get out of the subway, and maybe I'll take a painkiller or two. Then I'll be okay. I ask myself, how much longer can I do this? How much longer can I hold all the equipment and get the photographs? I could probably do this for another 15 years. I'll just keep going until I can't do it anymore. I may be 6 feet under pushing up daisies when people realize that I've had this tremendous visual record of what took place in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. It's almost the history of Chinese in America. I'm okay with not being recognized at this point, because as long as the photographs are still around and they're circulated or deposited, let's say in the Library of Congress, researchers will start looking.
At this stage of my life,
I'm happy with it. I can leave something for future generations.
a lot of college students come up to me and say, Corky, I studied you in college. That generally makes me laugh, and I said, if I got a dollar for every time my name is mentioned in a college lecture, you know, I'd be a rich man in China, but I'm still a struggling photographer in America.
I've been asked why I continue taking the activist photographs, and I said, if I don't do it, I can't think of anybody else that would do it. But in doing so, I know I've empowered and inspired other people to do the same thing.
Maybe I'll encourage someone else to take up the cause, and if they're willing to sacrifice financial gain, that they can become the next Corky Lee.